Hi, yes, hello. Thank you for tuning back in. I'm so sorry. Let me just start this by saying I am so sorry. I have this thing that will not get out of my brain, okay? And Spirit has been in my brain about it for weeks, okay? And so it needs to get out of my brain, and it's going to get out of my brain, and you're going to get to see it too. And hopefully it helps explain something that you've been working on, because it's a really broad, really general kind of view of, how I see energy and how I see it break down and come in and play out. But it can be applied in a lot of different situations. We're going to talk about a couple. Again, I'm just so sorry, but you get to be in my brain too. I'm so sorry. And I've known that I've wanted to make this video for about a week now. So for literally a week straight, if not more, I have been asking Spirit. I'm like, Spirit, I cannot do this. I don't know how to get what's in my brain onto the computer. And I'm typically, when that happens, I ask Spirit for analogies, and Spirit just kept giving me this sort of like upside down cone shape sort of thing, which I have my beautiful 90s graphics, early 2000s style, whatever they're at now, right? I have them ready to go. Again, I'm so sorry. I have them ready to go. And then last minute, Spirit was also like, "Hey, what about goo? What about slime?" And I was like, "Spirit, I hate slime. Slime is not allowed in my house. I don't. We're not a slime person, not a slime girly." But did I make a graphic? Yes, I made a graphic. But before I show you that loosely defined air quote artwork that I have for you, let me show you some of my favorite artwork that is a lot better. I can say that because I made the bad artwork. Okay, this one's a lot better. The Temple of Chaos has new merch designs dropping weekly all the way through the end of November on the Mama Needs a Minute website, which don't wait till the end of November, okay? It's literally just a couple mamas making all of these shirts, trying to get it together in this economy, right? And the temple also uses their profits, which is just a little bit, but it is helpful. Uses their profits to just run overhead and to pay the couple employees that we can pay. We have a lot of really amazing stuff coming up, but in order to get all of that prepared, we really have to focus our funds a little bit differently. So, if you find value in my videos or in anything that we offer, please, if you have it in the budget, only if you have it in the budget. Think about sending just like a little bit of a donation. Every little dollar counts, and we don't need a lot, but it's very, very helpful. So anyway, I want to talk about this art piece also because it is one of my favorites, and it was actually commissioned by a local artist who also taught my son homeschool art lessons. It was the cutest thing. Unfortunately, his art teacher had to undergo a number of surgeries, and so we had to stop lessons, but it was definitely one of his favorite core memories. And their name is Aaron. They did this one for me, and this is absolutely one of my favorites. Okay, so the way that I saw this video going is essentially I want to show you a few different graphics to kind of give you different ways to visualize or picture or think about how energy comes in and plays out in very different ways, specifically how it comes in from our fullers or bigger beings, and some of the ways that we can see that filter down both into Earth and into our stories. And there's a lot of different kind of areas that this could be applied. You could apply it to past lives. You could apply it to timelines. You could apply it to like infinite realities of the same version of you. But we're not going to do all of that in this one, okay? We're just going to pull it all the way back, and we're just going to give you just a couple little visuals that maybe down the line will make you a little bit less crazy when Spirit tries to explain things like this to you. That's where I'm at. I'm feeling pretty crazy because this is how Spirit explains things to me, but hopefully y'all can understand it a little faster than I did. I'm actually really nervous about this video because I'm afraid that this is too ridiculous and it's going to like just cause more confusion rather than actually help anything. So if that's the case, just literally ignore me. Just ignore me for this week, okay? But maybe, fingers crossed, this will help explain something to somebody and it will all be worth it. Initially, when Spirit showed me this like concept, this idea, they showed it to me in this way, okay? They showed it to me in this like cone shaped manner, but it looked less like a cone and it looked really weird like slime, okay? But I could not for the life of me figure out how to get that out of my brain in the way that it came in. So instead we have two separate visuals, okay? We have the visual that is like closer to the way that Spirit has tried to explain it to me. And then also we have the slime visual, which Spirit gave to me last minute because I kept insisting this one made me seem crazy. But I mean, here we are anyway. I am really grateful for the slime example though, because it is kind of an easier place to start, even though I do think spirits, again, just kind of fucking with me because they know how much I hate slime. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about slime, and not just any slime. It's going to be slime with all the mix-ins. Okay, do you guys know the slime that I'm talking about? The ones that come in like giant Christmas packaging. Yeah, I'm already afraid. Giant Christmas packaging with like a big bucket of slime and then like 4 other little containers of like beads and gems and little character cutouts and who glitter, always the glitter, right? I confiscate the glitter packets, but you guys know the slime packages I'm talking about, okay, with all of the mix-ins, and it's exactly like that. It is exactly like that. So we have our slime with the whole slime in the hand, right? That whole big initial chunk of slime. Let's think about that as our fuller for a second, as like our whole orange. That is a place, any place where you are getting your energy from. Like that is in and of itself kind of like its own being, its own consciousness. And then from that, the slime drips down and you get some of that energy as a human. But the slime doesn't just like drip down equally. Now in my brain, in the cone shaped one, it does drip down a little bit more equally. We'll get to that in a second, right? But over here, let's focus on those add-ins. The slime doesn't drip down equally. Like the add-ins are dispersed throughout the slime. Now for this analogy, think of the add-ins to the slime. Think of them as types of energy or types of beings, right? So my daughter helped me create this one. She's very pink fae, in case you haven't noticed, right? But we have our bows, we have our unicorns, we have our purses, we have our trees, right? And so each one of those mix-ins kind of represents a part of that bigger energy. It represents a portion of it that maybe your human life is just really into the bows, right? Like maybe the bows are a really big thing for you. They for sure are for my daughter. And so because the bows are a big thing for you, that bow energy, I know this sounds absurd, but that bow energy exists in that fuller being as well. And also because it exists within that fuller being, and that add-in, do you guys see where I'm going? It exists within this fuller being, and that add-in drips down to your human and makes you a bow human. This sounds insane. I know I should have picked something better than bows, but I don't know if you've met Anna, but she's her whole thing, okay? Anna's not a problem, okay? Anna is the entire problem, and I could not be prouder. I am in fact tired though. Like I am very proud and also very tired, okay? So we're just doing what Anna says at this time. I just live here. Okay, back to our slime. So our fuller, wholer orange all the way up in those hands, right? Like that's where that slime is coming from. It is originating from this hand and it is dripping down with all its add-ins, all its mix-ins, and it's dispersed a little bit differently. It's all coming from the same energy, so it's all technically the same being, right? But it is being dispersed differently, and different parts of that energy as it goes down are going to get different mix-ins, and what is that mix-in is going to determine not just what that human is, for example, but it also determines what is in that fuller. I know we have this really weird, like, as above, so below. That's going to be a theme. Hold on to it. So for me personally, the slime analogy, even though very helpful and very funny, it doesn't make the most amount of sense in my brain. So that's why when Spirit initially explained this to me, they explained it to me more like the cone, right? It's kind of like a slime cone mixture, but it's closer to the cone. However, we're going to keep those add-ins because that visualization I think is very helpful when we see it kind of all drip down. The reason that I think this cone shape makes more sense in my brain is because it better matches the energy distribution in the way that I see, say, the amount of energy that a human holds versus the amount of energy that a fuller holds. So at the top of the cone, or maybe this is an inverted cone, the big part of the cone that's all the way on the top of the screen, right? Like that's where the most energy is. And that kind of holds true for the slime analogy too, right? All that energy came from the hands that were holding the slime, but that is where the energy is coming from. That is your fuller, that is source, that is whatever like starting point you want to use for this analogy to work in your brain. That is where the energy is coming from. And as it drips down, as it goes down, the amount of energy available, because it's getting used up on the way, gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And we get down to, say a human. So I could just kind of like broke our cone up into these different sections because that is how they show it to me in my brain. Like it's the slime cone, but then there's like spaces between the sections. So I broke it up into a couple different sections and I kind of just put a couple examples, very rough examples of like the way I would typically expect this energy structure to play out. So we have that bright, like sparkly galaxy purple. That's the source, that's energy, that's fuller, whatever, right? And then under that, let's say we have some two like really ancient, really huge beings or gods that have been around for, I mean, like a super long time, right? So that energy could have two different mix-ins to it, two different types of gods that are like super ancient, existed before Earth. And the way that those mix-ins came down could just kind of determine the way the energy was split a little bit. And just fun fact, our fullers can really specifically pull the energies that they want from them, from their fuller energy, and like separate it very detailed and very specifically. It could say, I want this God energy here, I want that God energy here. So they have a little bit more control versus like the slime just dripping down. But that is a good visual of kind of how it's broken up and how it plays out. So we have these ancient gods that have a couple different mix-ins, so that energy separated. And then from there, those gods are still technically somebody's fuller. So from there we have, let's just say like the fairy realms, or maybe like gremlins, or something that is also really magical, also needs a decent amount of energy to it, but maybe not quite as much as some of these ancient gods. Maybe they don't need to travel as far. Maybe they don't have as much like crazy work to do, which I will get to in a second, but they're still really magical as fuck, and they still need a decent amount of energy. By the way, I do know a ton of people who have Fae as their fuller. So that's a totally valid, like, next step up being that you could be connected to. But so we have our Fae fuller. And then from there, yeah, maybe you have a human, right? Here you are having a human life. Fae and humans tend to walk very close together. They don't really travel too far away, at least the Fae that we typically think of on Earth, right? They don't travel too far away. They don't need to do too much outside of this kind of like Earth Gaia energy realm. But they still need a lot of magical energy. And then they do still have a little bit energy to spare. And so they're powering a human. And there is levels below where we exist right now. I don't go there very often. I'm not going to lie to you. Every time I think about it, all I see are these like lava rock things. And again, thinking about myself being a fuller to a lava rock does kind of rock my brain a little bit. So I don't think about it too much. But in theory, it's there. And again, this is just like a very rough, very broad, generalized kind of concept to get something out there, right? To put something in. The way that this plays out for every individual, human, not human, whatever it might be, it's so detailed, it's so intricate, it's so individualized. I promise you, from where I'm sitting, yeah, it looks like crazy slime dripping down. I'm not gonna lie, okay? But thank the heavens, thank all the gods, whoever you want to thank, that I am not in charge, that I'm probably not your fuller, because I can barely handle myself. But they know what they're doing. They are being very detailed. It's a lot more organized than I'm making it seem, but from a human perspective, I'm making it seem exactly as crazy as it does seem. But I promise you, when you zoom out of the human perspective, when you pull back, when you look at it in an energy structure, a grander scheme of things, it not only makes sense, but it's so lovingly detailed. It is so intricately put together to be exactly who you are supposed to be. So I'm doing it very rough. I'm doing it very broad, very generalized, but just know that when it comes down to the nitty gritty, there is detail and thought and so much care put into every energy structure of every being. You have to remember, even the beings that are like, oh, why would that ever be created? How is that good for anything? We have to remember that good and bad is relative, and it's all just based on perspective. And sometimes things need to be balanced. I say sometimes, and I mean quite literally all the time. Things need to stay balanced. And so there is going to be a positive and a negative, a push and a pull to, the way that energy is structured, the way that it goes down, and the way that it's organized. There's not necessarily good and bad. There are beings that are bad from our perspective, sure, but good and bad is relative. And if, again, we zoom out and we look at energy structure, and we look at maintaining balance, and we look at the way that energy is like a magnet, does have sort of a positive and negative charge to it, and the way that it pushes and pulls, again, it's all very detailed, very thought out, very thorough. Okay, let's go back to our cone. And it's getting really fun at this point, right? So at the top, we have that fuller, that source, all that energy, okay? Now, full disclosure, this is actually where Spirit started to explain things to me, because what I was finding in all of our shifting and moving and grooving that we've been doing on Earth, all of the like going up for New Earth stuff, if you're not quite sure what I'm talking about, I have Timeline Part 1 and Part 2, which are not too old, I don't think. They are back in the playlist. They could be helpful in understanding this nonsense just a little bit more. But what I was finding was that I had all this information about people previously. Like I'd done readings for them and I'd been like, yeah, this is their past life and this is their fuller and this is this and this is that. And then we did all of this shifting and we did all of this changing, and things have shifted and changed so much that that history is kind of not feeling relevant anymore. That energy connection, it's not linking in the same way that I felt it link when I initially did these readings, when I initially got this information. So I was like, hey, Spirit, I'm going to need some answers. Why is this different? What is going on? How can what you told me before be true and what you're telling me now, which is completely different, also be true? Like, which one is it? It's not that I'm seeing a different Fuller's history. You're telling me this same person has two different histories. What is going on? I'm going to need a little help with that. And so this is kind of what Spirit gave me. Okay, yes, it looks like a lot of nonsense. It is a lot of nonsense, okay? But there is a little bit of a method to this nonsense. Now, keep in mind that the whole reason that Spirit was showing me this image was because I was asking how these two things were true, but this is no longer true, right? Like I was asking what the hell was going on there. So for this image, they did not start and put the swirly power at the top. They did not put that at source, okay? That was a very specific Fuller. And of course, listen, I'm really sorry if I'm the first one to tell you this, but the universe is chaos. The universe, things are really well planned and detailed, but as a whole, the universe is chaos. And I know that doesn't make sense, but I promise you that's it's chaotic, okay? So sometimes Fullers don't get along, right? You guys can see the grenade and the sword trying to attack that Fuller energy at the top, okay? Because sometimes things just don't get along. Like I said, my daughter helped me pick out all of these mix-ins. So we're going to stick with the fairy theme, okay? So this Fuller energy at the top, it has a set of fairy wings on it, but it's really just a bunch of swirling energy. When it comes to like actual battling, swirly energy only goes so far, especially if you need to interact or hide or get something or do whatever you got to do. If you have to do something that requires maybe a physical grasp of something, your swirly energy is probably going to have to send some of that energy down to have some type of form that can go do these things and interact with these beings that are physical, right? Because as a human, it's a little bit tricky to interact with the swirly purple ghost, okay? But as a human, it's a little bit easier to interact with something that also is tactile to our 3D memory. So sometimes that energy has to send down other beings in certain ways, shapes, and forms. Okay, so it's still kind of that energy. We're still really, really close to that Fuller. These types of situations, that energy that gets sent down tends to have a lot of energy to it. They tend to really have a bang for their buck, right? But they are still just distributing that energy. It is going down a little bit. However, that purple swirly energy at the top is still being attacked, and that is going to have a ripple effect down through the other beings that it powers. And the way that that ripple effect plays out is what Spirit was showing me in terms of the power distribution and kind of this like cone slime situation. And I also wanted to use this like star-crossed lovers, warring family, Romeo and Juliet vibe that we just see play out in stories, I think, throughout all history, right? Like there are common ideas, common human pains, common magical ideas that are shared throughout the world, throughout history, throughout all the different times. They all come back to very similar, very common ground. And I think that the way that that energy gets translated, it gets translated into the different stories, into what is needed by the society at the time. The way it gets translated is differently. But at its core, the energy is often there. That energy exists and is often coming from somewhere. So I wanted to show just like double example with this like graphic. We have both the way the energy is kind of like playing out, expanding down, and also how what is happening on one level plays out and has effects and gets translated differently, and basically the mix in that you've been assigned to that life. Because again, we really have this sort of like yin and yang situation that goes on in terms of Fuller energy, and it's a little bit mind twisty, so just do your best to stay with me and I will do my best to get the words out. But the energy that our Fuller has, it has to come from somewhere, right? Like it comes from somewhere. It's structured somehow. And the way that I see energy, it is all structured somehow. And that's part of how things stay balanced and it's very important and yada yada, but the structure is there. And the energy comes from a Fuller, absolutely, but the Fuller gets its energy, source gets its energy from us because we are source. And so who we are, every single individual being, that energy is what makes up source. The energy of the individual being is what makes up where the fuller gets its energy from, where source gets its energy from, because we are, I'm sure you've heard, source just experiencing itself. We are just experiencing ourselves, which is, again, a very interesting idea to take into this, because when we go by this star-crossed lovers, warring family sort of model, the two families, the two lovers, whoever it might be, are coming from the same energy. And that's just another little tidbit to play around within your brain, right? We are, no matter what, how far away we're connected, we are in some way experiencing ourselves. Source is experiencing itself. So as above, so below, this sort of yin and yang balance out situation going on. We are what makes up our fuller, and we are our fullers. We are from our fullers. So it's very, again, what happens in one realm ripples through another. Essentially, Spirit showed me that on every sort of level, on every sort of section of this slime cone we have going on, the energy is present, but it is playing out in accordance with the amount of energy that it has. So, for example, our two fairies on the top, I don't know what kind of weapons fairy have, but I know they be packing. These fairies are fighting. These fairies are on the ground. These fairies are a big part of where the rest of the energy is coming from. But there's also a really big part of that warring fuller self energy there as well. And so a lot of this life, or the beings, the add-ins, the mix-ins that exist on this level, on this slice, they're probably going to be very consumed with whatever this war situation is, because not only is that why they were essentially broken off into these slices, into these orange slices, but it's also in just proximity to this fuller war energy that is going on. They have so much of that fuller war energy in them. They're very, very close to it. It's literally right there. And so a lot of their life is very likely going to be only the war in whatever way that that plays out. Now, under those two fairies that are for sure packing, we have two other fairies. And these fairies I have just kind of imagined as a king and a queen warring kingdoms fairies. They might not be doing actual like combat fighting, but there's definitely going to be animosity somewhere in there, whether it be with part of the same fuller energy or a different fuller energy. There's going to be some type of animosity playing out from this war energy. Now, it could play out in like they make their kingdoms go to actual war. They could play out in almost like a type of Cold War situation where there is a lot of fear and a lot of drama, but maybe there's no actual like sword fighting on the ground. I don't know. I'm not a fairy person. I'm doing my best, okay? And then under that, maybe we don't have fairies at all. Maybe we just have extra magical humans, humans that have enough energy to go and do something that is a little bit weird for a human to do, right? And so for this, I'm thinking like Witcher vibes. I'm thinking like old English magic and dragons type vibes, right? We have two beings. Again, they could be some from the same fuller, they could not be, but we have two beings that are playing out this warring energy again, this animosity energy again, in some type of way. Now, maybe these beings are, almost human or just barely human. They're not quite as magical as Fae. They're definitely not packing Glock fairy up there, right? But they have that animosity and they do still have that same energy. And so maybe we have just a little bit less energy to play around with. Maybe we're just a little bit less angry at the other person because we don't have as much of that immediate available connection of fuller energy that is also full of animosity and warring, right? So maybe the drama is a little bit less. Maybe it's just like one really big part of their life, but maybe not their entire life. Now, under that, I've just gone with Romeo and Juliet for kind of like the human example. Now, I'm not saying that if you have warring energy as a fuller, I am not saying that your life is going to end Romeo and Juliet style. That is not at all what I'm saying. I'm just being hella dramatic for this one, okay? I'm just being balls to the wall dramatic. Okay, so this is not don't take my word for it, okay? We're just being dramatic. But we have Romeo and Juliet, right? That warring is still so intense, but it's muted in a lot of ways. Romeo and Juliet, even though the families are warring, this entire story is focused on simply two people. It's focused on the trauma and the drama and just the heartbreak and everything that is involved in the trope of Romeo and Juliet, right? And so it's playing out in a very human way, in a very human emotional sense. But this energy still is existing somewhere. It's still coming from somewhere. Now, like I said before, there's things that do exist under humans. I don't exactly have a great example of how this warring energy might play out with lava rocks. Maybe we just have really sad lava rocks. Maybe there's lava rocks that war always happens around and the rocks can't walk up and move, so they just happen to be in a bad spot. I don't really know how the lava rock society world works, but I'm just taking a guess. But it plays out, you guys get my point, it plays out in very different ways, in very different amounts and levels, based on the energy that is there, the energy that is available for that life, that soul, that mix-in to use and pull from. But the question still stands, like, why do I have one person having two different histories that are kind of the same idea, but are not the same? Like, how does that actually play out? And so to explain that, I want to go back to this kind of like energy structure, gods, humans, fairies, lava rocks example. Now, this is hopefully where we're going to bring it all home, okay? So the timeline videos, we talked about how Earth is shifting up and Earth is moving up. And with it, new magic and new possibilities and just new everything could be available to us because more energy is simply available to us, more magic and power and potential. As we do this sort of shifting up, we are, you can think about it as aligning to these levels differently now. Previously, we have been kind of stuck very close to the structure that we align with energetically. It was very, very difficult to move up these structures. And I'm not saying it was impossible. I'm just saying it took a lot of time, it took a lot of effort, and it took a lot of really conscious expanding. At least in my experience, it took a lot of really dedicated time and energy in the pursuit of expanding what I wanted to know. However, I have noticed since all of this new earth shifting started that the amount of effort that it takes to expand your knowledge, to ask questions, to expand your consciousness, the amount of effort per the expansion that you are getting is astronomical. Okay, so we are needing very, very little effort to expand to these very big degrees as compared to kind of where we used to sit well before any of this like new earth energy started kicking up. And the difficulty in moving these levels in the old structure is not so much anything to do with the human and a lot to do with simply the fact that Earth could not hold the same amount or the same type of energy then as it can now. And so getting in the energy that you would need and being able to hold it both as a human and as the collective consciousness and as Earth Gaia energy, like being able to like quote unquote physically hold that, it needed a lot of bells and whistles. It needed a lot of different like things going on. It was very, very complex. It was so difficult. Okay. Like spirit has tried to energetically show me the nonsense that it was. And it truly is more nonsense than this. Can you even imagine? So now with all this new earth energy, that energy is available. Earth has the ability to hold it. And in a lot of cases is calling in more energy so that it can keep expanding and keep filling up and keep doing this sort of shifting up within the universe as a whole. And so not only was it very, very difficult for the shifting between these levels to have happened previously, Spirit also just didn't need to explain it as much previously as it is probably going to need to explain things like this before. And what I mean by that, a fun little thing to keep in mind is that spirits are learning also. And so they are, for the first time in a very, very long time, if at all, I don't even know, they're having to learn how to explain these things to humans. And even if they have explained them to humans before, because I personally believe that Earth has gone through 3 or 4 civilizations full cycle before we got here. So even if they have explained these things before, they haven't explained them to us, to the modern human, to where we're sitting in our linear timeline right now. And so they are having to learn how to explain this in a million different ways because our brains, our human brains and our spirit energy, they all work in a million different ways. And so spirit is also learning how to explain all these things. So maybe down the line, I can get you some better graphics and some better analogies, but we're all just doing the best we can right now. And I don't have a super sciencey brain. I understand biology the best, but past that, when we got into like chemistry and string theory and dimensions, my brain gets a little funny. It gets a little hazy up there. And so, like I mentioned, even if spirit has explained this to humans before, even if somebody has cracked the code, more and more humans are doing this kind of quote unquote grand awakening, this great exploration. They're doing this thing where now they are searching this information out. They want to know. Where before it was almost a very specific like subgroup of humans that were driven to do this. Now we are seeing it on really, really big numbers. We're seeing massive waves and massive push to want to understand more than just what is happening. We want to understand more as a human, and we want to understand more as a spiritual being, because what we are seeing and what is in front of us, we know is not making sense. And so we're seeking answers in very different ways. And the answers are going to come in very different forms based on who you are and also based on who the spirit is. I want to wrap the video up with one last just juicy little idea for you to keep in your brain and play around with, because I have this sneaking suspicion that moving forward, more and more dramatically and quicker, we're going to need to shift the way that we see the world. We're going to need to shift the way we see ourselves within the world, the way we see ourselves within the universe, the way we see the universe. If we want to keep up on this push of expansion, if we want to keep up on this path of knowing, it's going to require a little bit of shedding old ideas, shedding old forms of ourselves, shedding these things that essentially are making room for this new energy that is trying to come in. And when this new energy comes in, it's going to pull us up. And we have a very, very cycle, very push and pull, yin and yang situation going on. Okay, now I'm being very dramatic with this picture, the most dramatic again, right? But so often right now, it feels like, quote unquote, hell on earth. It feels like war. It feels like all of these things happening on earth right now. And we want this just ultimate love to come from spirit. We're looking to spirit to answer questions and to solve our problems. And yes, absolutely, spirit is nothing but love. We are experiencing ourselves. We need to love ourselves. Fun fact, that starts by loving your human. Yes, I'm talking to you. We need to start by loving ourselves, because if we are sending energy up the same way that energy is coming down, if we can love ourselves, there will be more love to get sent down to this hell on earth. Stay with me. I'm not done yet. This is another good visual representation of that sort of like, we are the universe experiencing itself. Everything that we see in front of us is a mirror back to us. All of that like brain mushy stuff, right? It's also a good kind of visual for this yin and yang situation we have going on, where what happens in one affects the other. But I also want to talk about it in terms of counterbalance, because there has to be balance within the world, within the universe. I don't know how to explain how bad it would be if things got out of balance, but the answer is bad, okay? And so we have balances, we have counterbalances to the energy that we are putting in. And this is, again, where we see perspectives becoming really important in things like, quote unquote, good and bad and stuff like that. Because, again, counterbalances have to exist somewhere. And so perhaps the bad guy to us is experiencing the universe from a different point of view, where if they don't do whatever it is they're doing, we are going to offset the entire balance of the universe. Perspective is a mind blower, let me tell you. So in conclusion, energy looks something like this right now, okay? It is the earth, Gaia, the collective consciousness here that is right now being pulled up by the energy that we are pulling in. And where are we pulling this energy in? We're pulling it in from the different versions of ourselves, and those different versions, those mix-ins, are coming down to us on earth through the energy that is coming down. I know it's a mess. Now, do you guys understand why I don't allow slime in my house? For real though, that was a lot, and it did get really, really messy. So I guess slime really is the perfect example for this. And that is also the perfect example for spirit fucking with me, giving me something that I hate as the perfect example. I love when we learn these things together. But it was a lot. Please let me know what questions you have. Please let me know what information you want me to expand on. Please let me know if you want me to link it more directly to the timeline videos or even the fuller self video. I'll put some links down below just in case you're like, that was a lot. You can go back and rewatch those videos and then maybe come back and try this again, or just ignore me. You are also welcome to just ignore me. I highly recommend it. It's a great time. But either way, I hope I see you next week.